Spring, let's make some flowers. Hi, I'm Lynn. Welcome to my channel. Join me on my journey as I sew, knit, and craft my way through my stash, exploring creative possibilities and stretching my imagination to fulfill my stash's potential and bring it to life. In my last video, I talked about future projects. Well, now they are past projects, at least the skirts, because I made them all last week. And I do need to correct myself because I said I could probably finish them all in a day, and I was delusional. I mean, I could have finished them all in a day if I did it all by machine, but I hand stitched my waistbands and hems, and that takes a lot of time. In actuality, it took me about a day to do a skirt. And, you know, of course, that's working after work and during my lunch hour, in the morning before I started work, that sort of thing. I'm really going to miss when I have to commute back to work because I got an extra like 2 hours a day because I'm working from home right now. So I guess that is a plus to all this thing. Anyway, if you want to find out how they all turned out, I will be posting the pictures and the results to my blog this week, and links are down below. I suggest you go check it out. There's all sorts of great content there that is not here on the YouTube channel. Now, as with my sewing projects, I did end up with scraps, and I've made a point to try to use up all of my fabric, including scraps. Now, so far, I've only had to deal with quilting cottons, and those, quite truthfully, are easy to use because you can just keep making quilts with them. Even smaller scraps, you can manage to make them into a quilt. So they're kind of easy to use up. But these skirts were all made from other fibers, more slippery fibers, and not suited to quilting. So what do I do with them? And I figured I'd try to make flowers from them. And I've decided to use this light blue fabric. If you remember, I was going to make a skirt with that, and it's got a little shimmer with it, which I think will make a nice flower. Now, something about this fabric that I will be writing about, but while this is a really pretty fabric to look at, it is incredibly uncomfortable to wear. Those little shimmers in there, I have a feeling, are made from some kind of metallic thread, I think, and is woven in there, and it is just scratchy. It is really an uncomfortable fabric, and I love the way the skirt turned out. I love the color of it, but I can barely wear it for 5 minutes because it is just so itchy. It is also incredibly sheer. I didn't realize quite how sheer it was. I don't know if you can even see my hand through there, but trust me, I have to wear a slip with this. And hopefully, when I do get a slip, and it's shedding all over the place. If you could see, I'm wearing black pants right now, and they are just, it's just falling all over the place. Anyway, back to my point. Hopefully, when I get a slip for this, it will solve both problems. It will solve the shear problem, and it will also solve the scratchy problem because it will no longer be directly against my skin. The slip will be there. So we'll see how all that works out. You know, amazingly, I don't have a slip. I haven't had a need for a slip in a long time. So I was going to make one and actually have fabric to make one. I just didn't have enough fabric to make it. So there's that. If I had really paid attention to this, I would have underlined this skirt, which means I would have gotten probably a lining fabric, and I would have sewed it with this fabric, and again, that would have probably solved both problems, or I would have just given the skirt a lining to begin with, but I really hadn't thought about that. So anyway, that is off the topic of making flowers. So I decided to try 3 different flower patterns to see, how they worked out, what they look like, and which ones I liked best. Now, you don't need to go out and buy a pattern for these. None of these, even though I did. The first flowers I made, I used this pattern that I have. It's Vogue 7009. And let's see if I can see when I bought this. 1999 it has a copyright of. So yeah, that could have been when I bought it. And that's not too far off. Anyway, it's got all these little flower decorations, and I have used this before to make a my friend had a company, it was called Simply Pretend, where she did dress-up parties, and she needed somebody to come in and play a princess. And I was like, well, I won't be a princess because no one's going to buy that I'm a princess. I mean, this was, if I bought this in 1999. Yeah. At this time, my son was probably, he's probably maybe 6 or 7. I don't know. Anyway, I was not a princess. I said, I'll be happy to go as a queen. And I went to the thrift store and found this. Actually, it was a really beautiful wedding dress, and I got it for like $20. It was just this sheer, not sheer, but it didn't really have a whole lot of lace. It was more like a tulle kind of thing, and it was in this big tulle skirt. I mean, it was really cool, and I went and added some little flowers to it. So I have used this before, but you don't, like I said, you don't have to buy a pattern for it. This is the actual pattern. So you can see all you need to do, oops, I got it upside down. All you need to do is just make a rectangle. This is, let's see how long this is. Do I have it on the right? This is actually, so make a rectangle that's 12 inches long and just curve the corners. That's all you need to do. You don't have to buy a pattern. And depending on the size you use is going to depend on the size of the flower, the bud that you actually end up with. The only thing is that you're going to want to make sure that you cut these on the bias. You want to have them stretch. So that is what the pattern for this particular flower looked like. I have it in a big and a small, and I cut it out of my fabric, and you can see it has some stretch to it. So I did cut it out on the grain. And then what you need to do is the next step is to take it and wrong sides together. So your right side is facing out. Hopefully you can still see that this has some shimmer. You're going to fold it in half and just baste it into place. Now my basting stitches, my machine does something that with the basting, the thread kind of jumps off sometimes, so I don't really use my basting stitch. I just crank it up to the widest stitch width and use that, and it works just fine. And then you're going to go across that, and see, I don't have it perfect or anything like that. And then what I did do is I know you're not going to be able to see this, but I did knot one end, because what you're going to be doing is gathering this, and you don't want to gather it and then all of a sudden accidentally pull the thread through, and then you did all that gathering for nothing. But you're going to take this is my, you're going to take one end and you're just going to start gathering it. And you're just going to keep gathering it And it's going to start twirling up on itself, and it's going to get all twisty. You can already kind of see it going into this pattern. And I'm just going to keep pulling. Let's see. And then what you do is you just kind of, so it's all gathered here. I'm going to try to straighten it out so you can see the gathers, but you can see the gathers there. It's all gathered. And then what you're going to do is just basically roll it up. Rolling, rolling, rolling. Isn't that is that a song? Is that rolling, rolling, rolling? I don't know. It's some spaghetti western or something. I'm showing my age here. But anyway, you just simply roll it up along the base like that. And then you have your, well, that's not the, okay. I'd probably play around with this a little bit more and make sure that it was a little bit nicer. And then, you know, you might want to knot the other end when you're done gathering it so it doesn't ungather on you. But you're going to roll it up at the base. And then basically that's what you get. And then what you're going to need to do is, I don't have a needle and thread with me because I put them all away. But what you're going to do is you're going to sew the bottom up so that it doesn't come undone. But you basically have one of these, and I already did one where I sewed it up. So you're going to have your little flowers. And then the little one, because I showed you I had cut out a little one also. There's what it looks like all set up. It's just like a little bud, so you can have different sizes in there. And that is what you get out of this one. I'm going to do all of them, and then I'm going to tell you which ones I like the best and the pluses and minuses of all of these. So the next one I did was a pattern given to me a long time ago. I think this has a date of 1995 on it, so I do keep my stuff. I guess I got that going for me. But I have a dear friend, I don't even know if she's around anymore. Her name was Joanna, and she was a fiber artist. I mean, she put garments in competitions and that sort of thing, wearable art competitions, and she just did beautiful work. And we took a workshop. I belong to actually a wearable art guild up in Dallas, and I don't even know if they're still going, but we had some great speakers, and she spoke one day and gave everybody this handout, which is just for a rose. And as you can see, it's got 3 different size petals here, and they are all cut out on the bias. So what I did was I just traced them out and used these for my pattern. And, you know, it's okay if you don't have the pattern. I mean, you can make a pattern from this. It's really easy. I think the key to all of these is cut it out on the bias, because the bias gives it the most stretch. Anyway, then I have my 3 pieces like this. So I have my 3 different sizes. 1, 2, 3. And again, as with the other one, you fold them in half, wrong sides together, so you want the right side out. And all I did was I went and basted along the raw edge here. And then I gathered it up. So it's basically the same process as with these, except just a different a slightly different shape to it. And the rose that I got out of that one was this. And this is all 3 petals in there. So what I did was I took the smallest petal, sewed it in half, I should say basted it in half, gathered it up, and then took the next one. I should preface this by saying that I gathered it up, and then I had a needle and thread and worked it, did like a running stitch through the gathers to pull it all. So I had one continuous thread for all of them. And then I took the medium size one, gathered it up, and before I attached the medium one, I took this and rolled it. It rolled up. So I rolled it up like I did with the first ones. And then when I got to that, I did the same thing with the medium one, then took my thread that I still had the small piece on, did a running stitch over the gathers on the medium one, and then rolled it up. And I might have even tacked it in so that it wouldn't ungather. And then I did the same thing with the largest ones. So it goes from small, there's your small little petal, here's your medium petal, and here's your large petal in the middle there. And then at the end, you have to, as with these, what you want to do is just tack it in so that this doesn't all unravel. And that is the flower that you get from this one. And here's the flower that, just so you can see the difference in those two. And then finally, the third one is something that I had seen before, is just cutting a square. So I cut squares. These squares are 5 inches. And what you do with these is you make a triangle out of them. So you fold them in half like that. And again, as with the other ones, you're going to take either you can do it by hand or by machine. I did all of these by machine, and then when I rolled them up and tacked them, that is when I did the handwork. But I machine basted all across the raw edges here, and then gathered them up again. And then this is what I got. So I did 2 so that you kind of see. So this is more of a petal. And also I've seen people use this particular technique of the square folded into a triangle for leaves. So if that was green, that might look like a leaf there. Now, I'm going to say this. This square technique, I mean, if I cut out 5 of these. Oh, here, I could show you. See how I basted them, have a running stitch. Then again, I knotted one end so that I wouldn't accidentally pull my threads when I gathered it, and just pull it and gather it. And this one, because you're working at a 90-degree angle, you kind of have like, this corner here that you're gathering. It's a little fussier. So I gathered it, and I kind of pulled it all to make sure like one side was gathered all the way till I could gather it no more, and then gather the next side. And then there you have your leaf. And of course, I would need a needle and thread again to do a running stitch along this gathered edge here, and just start tacking it. Now, let me, I haven't tried this. What if I rolled this up? Okay, you kind of get like a little leaf shape if you roll it up, but this is really more or less meant to be a petal. And I don't know if it's the fabric I chose or if it's the size. 5 inches might have been too big to make these, but I find these kind of cumbersome. But on a bigger project, you may want, they look like little ears. I could be the Easter bunny. Just joking. So you can add 3 more petals and you can make a little flower with them. So that is another technique. So a couple of things about all of this. First of all, I was covered, and I am covered in threads now from this. It might be beneficial, even though you're working on the bias, and technically when you're working on the bias, things shouldn't fray, but because this fabric is one of those slippier kind of fabrics, it might have been beneficial for me to go ahead and actually serge the edges first to give it a nice clean finish instead of having something that looked like that. And then go in and do my basting stitch and gather it up. You'd have to test it and see. Doing the serging may add more bulk than you want to on the bottom here. I don't know. I didn't try it, so I can't tell you. But it's definitely a possibility. What I would use these for is I probably wouldn't use them on a garment. I think they're just too bulky. Unless, yeah, they're just kind of too bulky for me. I was thinking that these would be fun to use to decorate hats or tote bags. Actually, I want to get into making hair decorations, so maybe a fascinator, something like that. I think these would be perfect for. Now, as far as which ones I liked best, I think it depends on the project. I don't mind the look of this. These are smaller, obviously, than the big petaled one that I used, the 3-petaled one I used. These are smaller, so you could actually use them on the, I'm trying to show things and whoops, and I'm forgetting that the camera is is there and not down there. But so this is a bigger one. These are smaller, so if you use different color fabrics, you could distinguish them that way. And then obviously we have our little baby bud here too that you could use. But as far as looks, I prefer either using this pattern or this pattern. I think, and I put all my pattern pieces in there so you can't see anything. I think it just gives more of a rose type of feel to it, or flower type of feel to it, and they're dimensional. I like how they would look, so I think they would be very pretty on a hat. And if I did put them on a hat, I think I'd be getting fray check, or maybe I'd be gluing them in. People might think that was rather scandalous, but I might do it. But getting some fray check, or even just using a glue gun just to glue around these edges so that it didn't fray and come apart. Not that I think a hat would have a whole lot of tussling around or anything like that, but you just might want to do that just to kind of hold the edges. So I think they would be beautiful decorations on a embellishments for a hat, for a bag, that kind of thing. So I would definitely use this pattern or using the curved rectangle pieces. And then, of course, depending on how big you make, how long and how wide you make these, you can make bigger flowers. But I think that those would just be prettier. As far as these squares go, I don't know. I would have to play around with them more. I see a potential in them, but part of the problem, I think, too, is that at least on these, there isn't so much mess down here, you know? You can use these and it'd be fine. Here, it just seems to me like there's just a lot of bulk down here at the bottom of them. So even if you did use them as petals and put the petals together like this, you'd still have this big center portion that you would need to deal with, because you wouldn't want all those ends to be hanging out like that. So you would still have to have something to put in there. Maybe that's where you put a flower center or some other design or something. But I think the flowers made from these triangles, these half squares, from the triangular pieces, just are a little bit more fiddly and would require a little bit more attention, because they just seem to have so much bulk here, and these don't have them. So I guess that's my, I guess if you use them as extra petals there, it probably wouldn't, it would work. You'd have to play around with them. But I think these are fun to make. I think this is a great way to use up these silky type of fabrics that we may have in our stash from making blouses or skirts. And they just make pretty decorations, and you can decide what you want to decorate with them, whether you want to put them on a hat, whether you want to put them on a bag, whether you want to decorate a curtain valance for a little girl's room. I mean, there's all sorts of, you can stick them on anything. If you got hot glue gun, go to town on it. But I think these are a fun way to use up scraps and make something special with them. So that was fun, and I've been wanting to try that out for a while, so it's good to see how that all worked out. And it would have been fitting today, being Easter and all, if I actually had a hat that we could have decorated them it with. I mean, Easter hats are a thing, right? Oh well, we'll save that for another day. So thank you for joining me today, and I'd love to hear which flowers you'd like best, or some of your ideas for using up dressy fabric scraps in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share with your friends. If you want to follow me on my journey, hit subscribe and the bell to receive notifications when a new video is up. You can also follow along on my blog. Links are down below. And I also just started an Instagram account, so you can follow me there also. So happy destashing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.